Water is life. And after 4 years of failed rains, life here in Turkana has come to this. Digging beneath the sandy riverbed for meager cups of muddy water. The Horn of Africa is no stranger to drought, but this crisis is different and is described by the United States as a historic humanitarian crisis. This is the stabilization ward for severely sick and malnourished children in Kakuma refugee camp. It's run by the International Rescue Committee and it's full. Around 10 children a day are being admitted, almost all in the grip of hunger's key illnesses, acute diarrhea, marasmus, and also TB and malaria. Dr. Kife Otieno guided me around the ward. Do you have enough medicines, enough feed and drips?
I'll tell you for sure, the supplies we had were not enough to sustain.
As we were talking, Jacqueline and her 4-month-old son, Givenye, were admitted. Givenye has been sick for 4 days with diarrhea, vomiting and fever, and Jacqueline rushed him to the clinic. A lone mother and unable to feed herself, Jacqueline has had to make a terrible choice over her other children in order to save Givenye.
Jacqueline, do you have other children? How many other children do you have? 4 other children. How are they? How is their health?
Just giving them, nobody's taking care of them at home.
In a nearby bed is Lucy. She's 18 years old and is with Jackson, who is her stepson. His mother died soon after he was born. Jackson is severely malnourished but is undergoing treatment.
Do we know what's wrong with him? I mean, obviously he's quite malnourished, but...
Yeah, right. Yeah, so you're treating Jackson for marasmus.
Marasmus, okay.
Right. So it's a wasting disease as a result of inadequate food intake.
So between January of this year and May of this year, you've basically gone up in terms of number of admissions, tenfold.
Exactly, tenfold.
That's shocking.
Yeah.
It tells a very, very sort of stark and grim picture, doesn't it?
Right.
Dr. Kife and his colleagues tell me that what lies behind the rising rate of hunger and malnutrition is not simply because of persistent drought. Rising global food prices and shortages of grain imports because of the war in Ukraine has made an already terrible situation catastrophic. Vincent Opinia says Russia's invasion of Ukraine combined with drought has locked the most vulnerable families in a vicious spiral of hunger.
In the month of May, we had 10 children who had been discharged but came back with malnutrition.
Because when they went home, their parents didn't have the livestock, didn't have the fertilizer,
yes.
Didn't have the grains from Ukraine and Russia.
Yes.
You only need to drive half an hour from the hospital caring for malnourished children to reach this remote village. And even here, this global crisis is being felt. Turkana, a largely rural and nomadic region of Kenya, is one of the most impoverished parts of the country. Humanitarian aid has helped sustain people here for decades. But because of the rise in global energy and food prices, disrupted supply chains, and the collapse of grain imports from Russia and Ukraine, getting aid and medicines to people now, just as crops and rains have failed, is putting lives in danger. Even as basic an operation such as this to deliver supplies to a small village in Turkana has been severely affected by the war in Ukraine. The fuel needed for vehicles has gone up multiple times. Kenya has run out of vital medicines needed for malnourished children such as Resomol, and they've had to scour for supplies across the globe. And even the prices of basic foodstuffs such as cooking oil and maize has skyrocketed. You can see with your own eyes how humanitarian operations across the Horn of Africa has been damaged by Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Sabina Kapua told me she used to earn enough money selling charcoal to care for her family, but because the price of basic goods had risen so much, she now has nothing. The village elder leads his community in a song of prayer, asking for rains to feed their lands. What's happening in Turkana is a snapshot of a crisis playing out across tens of thousands of villages across Kenya, Ethiopia and Somalia. a tragedy affecting more than 18 million people, paying the price of a war thousands of miles away. Rageh, Omaar, ITV News, Turkana.
And Rageh will be back.